So we are live once again with Paranormal Q&A with Jack, Kenna, and
Carly Haw.
that way,
Hi.
that way.
No, I go this way. Because if I don't, I'll hit the mic. So,
Yeah,
yay.
no, you're over there. You're over. It's
Oh,
actually the
you.
direction that
Okay.
you're. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pointing my head towards where you are. So here we are. It's again another show, and it's Tuesday night, our favorite night, and we have a very special guest coming on tonight. He's a very good friend of ours, brother from another mother, Mr. Keith Bailey. And I'm gonna, because it's kind of a special treat tonight with Keith, and he's going to have some things he's going to talk about. We're probably not going to do our standard Q&A, but Keith has a lot that people will want to know about, and it brings a lot to the paranormal community and to just his friends in general. He's a great guy. But Carly, I'm going to let you read his bio and introduce him to everyone out here tonight. So go ahead with that.
Keith was born and raised in Houston, Texas. He began to experience the paranormal at the age of 12 after his grandmother passed away. 2 weeks after her passing, he would wake to find his grandmother standing at the foot of his bed. From then on, Keith knew his grandmother was watching over him, protecting and sheltering him. Keith has begun to investigate in his own in hopes to help others who have experienced paranormal activity. After an accomplished career of 30 years in the fire service, Keith retired to follow his dreams and passions in the paranormal industry. To date, Keith has investigated numerous historically haunted locations, private homes, and fire stations to help explain the paranormal activity going on within. He has also spent years attending paracons throughout the United States, where he began to connect with many that he now calls colleagues. When he has questions about a subject matter he is unfamiliar, he turns to a plethora of friends and colleagues in the paranormal industry, such as John Zaffis, Jay and Marie Yates, Dustin Perry, James Anito, Jack Kellen. Oh my gosh, I just combined your two names together.
Yes, you did.
Jack
But
Kellen,
that's
Ellen
okay.
McDaniel.
That's okay. I'm good with that.
I was doing so well. Jeff
You were.
Adkins, Todd Bonner, Grant Wilson, Joe Citrone, and Joe Citrone to help sort out his questions. Jack Kellen. Everybody. Oh, gosh.
Oh my God, I don't even know how you spell that one. Anyway, so yeah, he's a very talented, multifaceted individual with a huge background in many things, and he's really caring about people. He really got into this field to really help people, work with people, just as he did in his previous career. So and it kind of carries over. So, but without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone to our very good friend and brother, Mr. Keith Bailey. Here you come, Keith.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
All right, doing good tonight, Keith. How you been? We were just talking just before the show. We had you on just before the show started, because I know you just finished up I think your other show too, right? So, but we were, yeah, we were talking about family and how we are all together in this, and actually, even John stepped in for a second. You were talking about that and 33 years together, and we were talking about all this really kind of close, good family stuff. And it's important.
It's so important. I mean, you guys know how I am, and you know that I cry when a fly goes by. And it breaks my heart to see people being so mean. Why are you so mean? We are in this industry to help people. That is the bottom line.
That's correct.
Back in history, when it started, when we go way back and you see it's a poltergeist, there were people who read and studied and learned and got to knowledge about that. And then when people said, who do I call? Well, Bill over in the next village knows about that. He can help you. And then over the years, we continued to go that route. And then it's almost now where the paranormal is more than it's about, when am I going to get my next TV show? Or when am I going to get to go somewhere and do something really amazing? And I ask people, when was the last time you went somewhere with somebody who was having something that was scared them to death, and it was possibly paranormal related, and you took the time to say, I'm going to come be there with you. How can I help you? And a lot of people go, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you know, I tend to ask, well, it's almost like that part in Wizard of Oz when Glinda says, "Are you a good witch? Or are you a bad witch?"
Bad witch.
Well, I'm not a witch at all. Well, you must not be a paranormal investigator at all.
I have my own response to that. Mine would be, I prefer a sandwich, but you know.
And Jack will be here all week. And that's the thing I say.
But I'm fine.
Exactly. And I say, so it does come from me doing what I do as
Right.
so many years as a firefighter, as a paramedic. I promoted, I became a captain. I graduated from the National Fire Academy. I went on to write the first template for suicide recognition, which is something called the Firefighter's Mental 360. And it's how officers were able to see when members started having little signs of possible a crisis, based on their attitude and balancing their life and compassion and dedication.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what I was driven to do. When I saw that we were having firefighters commit suicide, when your Rolodex gets filled up here and there's nowhere else to input that stuff that processes in your brain and it overloads, you can't take it anymore. And you go off and you shelter and you just break down. I said, we have to have an outlet to help these people. So when that happened, and then my fire chief sent me to National Fire Academy, I just loved it. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I became inspired. It's the same way I feel about in the paranormal. It's that I know that love I feel when I get to go somewhere and that family is all crying when we get that answer and they walk up to you and hug you and say, thank you. You helped us face something that we feared and we didn't know what to do and you came and helped us. That's a huge, powerful feeling in your heart that just makes you feel when you come home and you just sit there and that energy jump from that excitement of helping them. And you're like, I just helped a family now that can sleep in their own home.
Correct.
And figured it out.
That's why we got started into it. Spirits of New England, everything. That is why we got into this, was to help families, help people, and as the best we could, to help them figure out what's going on. And I want to throw this up here because there's a young Keith.
That is a very young Keith. That is circa 1994, I believe. I drove fire trucks back when the horse in the back would kind of scoot them along. but many.
I think that one had an engine in it though, but that's okay.
It did, and so I was blessed to get to do that, and I tell you, I loved it. To get to train rookies and to teach them to not, to be careful and don't get burned and rescue people and pull people out of car accidents that were trapped. And some of the other people may not know, as you see there as well. I'm a musician. I've been playing drums since I was 6 years old. It's actually naturally talented. I just was a little kid banging on stuff, making noises. And my mom and dad says, oh my God, he's playing to that song. Like he's playing it right to the song. So I got a little bitty drum set when I was little.
I brought this up in case people want to. Now we shortened your bio because I didn't want to spend the whole hour reading it. So yours is like mine, right? We could read it for an hour, Right. But I brought this up because if people want to read more about you and your backstory, we're going to talk about that here tonight anyway. But they can go to our website, spiritsofnewengland.org, and check you out on our About page. It's all of our team members there. But they can check out what you've done and all the different things. And that's what's here. I mean, certified, you've done so much. I mean, there's all this about some of your paranormal stuff there too. I mean, there's so many great things on there. They can go there. But I did want to share that photo of you.
Yeah.
Because I like that photo of you. I actually like that photo.
It's that's a very memorable day. I got to be careful not to get too on the south. My mom took that picture. And she started crying, and she was holding my little niece Keela, and she told my captain at the time he's wanted to be a fireman ever since he was a little boy. And so I literally made my mom and dad proud. They says one thing about Keith, he was a little kid and he used to say he wanted to be a fireman. So I did get to live the childhood dream and do it, but
right. But we talk about our past, we talk about things we did, but people usually don't get to see pictures of us from that time, or what we were like, or our attitudes, and because photos can tell what we were thinking. Sometimes give people an idea of what we were like, what we were thinking about, or what was on our mind. Obviously, you had a good sense of humor. I mean, we knew you do anyway, but
I always do. Well, that actually, humor is a type of therapy, right? We all do that with a way to laugh sometimes. And then we may actually, and I've done it, I've kind of laughed at something and I go back then and I think, because as firefighters, people always said we had a very cruel sense of humor.
I do that for war too.
I heard Carly say that one day, and we know that it's because if you absorb that so dark, you would not be able to function when stuff is happening, and you just would fall apart. So I laughed when I could, I cried when I needed to, and I always had people's back when they needed somebody to turn to, and that's something I've lived by. I literally am. A lot of people know me as a lot of things, but I like to consider myself like a big brother. I'm a beast of a guy. I'm 6'5", 270 pounds. I look like a refrigerator, UFC firefighter, a fighter, but I have a very tender heart. And I've said that I'm 99% nice. It's that 1%. If you try to hurt my family members, my friends, or I turn my hat backwards and I say, this is not going to end well. Okay, let's not do this. Right. But I say that because we are compassionate people, but as it's just like dogs, you see them when somebody tries to attack their puppy, that mother will come up and turn and say, "Oh, not today, fella, I'm going to bite you." But it's because we have that in our hearts, right?
Right, absolutely.
It's like me with Henry.
And now you had told, well, you didn't talk to me, but you were telling Carly that there's something you really wanted to talk about tonight, something that happened a long time ago to you. And I want to make sure we get to that and we don't forget about it, if you still want to talk about it.
Yeah, we need to talk about it because it's the reason I think that I have the gift that I do. I really believe it. And then as things played out in time with Dad and Kevin and Mom, they kind of tied together. So wow, yeah,
it's really not talked about in your bio that much. I mean,
no,
I think there's maybe just a mention to it, but nothing really. But I know you want, and we have talked about it before. You and I have talked about it, and I do agree with you. I do think it is the reason you have the abilities you have. I 100% agree with that, because that type of thing can bring them on. Well, so I'll let you talk about it however you like.
So I'm gonna talk about something that happened to me as a little boy, and I was young. So my grandmother, when I was about 12 years old, she passed, and I was very close to my grandmother.
Right.
And I had a hard time with that. I just didn't understand death. I could not try. I want grandma, and where is she? Where's Nanny Babe? And my dad was like, Keith's really beat up over this. And I had a twin brother, Kevin, and he knew he said, something's the matter with Keith. And I just cried to my mom. I says, I can't believe she's gone. So as time went by and I got to get to be where I read my Bible and I started understanding things a little more about life and death, I turned 13 and I went to have a procedure one day, and they were going to do a tonsillectomy. And as they started to do the tonsillectomy, I had got sick. So the doctor said, here, I'm going to give Keith this medicine, and go ahead and let him take it. And then once they get through this, you can bring him back. So my mom and my aunt were in the car. You remember that part in the Chevy Chase movie, Family Vacation, right? The green station wagon.
You're not telling me you put the grandmother
The
on top
ugly
of the
one.
cart, did you?
No, I didn't do
Oh,
that.
okay.
But it was an
Okay.
ugly station wagon. And there I was in the back seat. And I took the medicine, and then we left the house, and then we go to the store. So Mom and Rand go inside the store, and I get to sitting there, and then I get to sitting there, and I kind of started feeling like I really needed a cough, and I was trying to really cough, and then it got to be to where I was hardly really even able to do that. I was like feeling like I needed to get air, and then I started to get to be to where I just felt like somebody was choking me, but there was nobody there. And then it got to be to where it started getting dark around me. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And I get to be to where I'm just about going to get out of the car, and then it goes black up around me, and that's it. Well, from that point on, I was not awake, but a man came out of the store, and where our car was parked and where he walked up right past the little lane there, and there I was leaning against the little window, and he saw me, and I wasn't moving, and I was a very bad shade of blue. So he runs back in the store and says, "Help, help, help. There's a little boy in a car. Something's the matter with him." So we found that out later. But from that point, I felt myself literally as if I was somewhere very dark. It was just dark. It was like I started less and less being able to hear things. And then it just went away. And then I felt myself to where I was like feet on the ground somewhere, but where I was, I didn't really know or recognize at the time. But then I find myself like trying to walk, like I don't know where I'm walking to, but I'm walking. And then as it gets to be, I'm walking, and I'm like, surely there's somebody around here. Hey, wait a second, where is everybody? And I'm walking till I finally get to be to where it gets a little bit more light, a little bit more light, and a little bit more light. And then I find myself, I'm kind of going up over like this little hill. And I looked up over the top of the hill down there, and I can see like a little pond, like there's a pond. I said, oh, at least there's some water. Surely if there's a water, maybe there's a fishing camp or something down there. So as I get closer and closer and closer, I can see the backside of somebody sitting, but they're looking towards the pond. And so I'm like I'm walking faster, like, hey, I'm lost. Can you help me? And as I go and get right towards this end of this little tiny little trail that goes there, this person turns, and it's my grandmother. And then I'm like, Grammy. But then I think, I'm excited, but I'm like, wait a second. Oh no. And then I realized, now she looks at me with this angelic look, like just a smile of this beauty. She looked younger than she was when she was older. She looked like that beautiful when I was, maybe 2 years old and she was younger, still a little more young, a little bit more beautiful. But she looked at me and she just kind of smiled. So I get over there and she just kind of takes my hand to sit me down. So I start to ask questions and she just was like, she put her hand up. And as I go to ask them, the way she answered me was through like telekinetic, like she was answering me, but her lips weren't moving. Like, where am I? You're with me, sweetie. But am I? Yes, you're with me. You are. Well, where am I? Do I get to go back? No, you're going to be with me. But she wasn't moving her lips. It just came from her.
Right,
and I was sitting. I understood. She answered it because I was trying to say it, and she already was giving the answer like that quick. And I sit there, and I just kind of leaned forward, and she just patted my little hand. And then she did not remove her hand, and then it came through like the answers came down through that way, like we were connected. Like she was like, stay with me, it's okay. But I felt very energized. Then I felt like, ooh, like this rush come through me. And I looked up, but then she kind of had my face and she had me look forward. And out over this beautiful little, the most bluest of bluest waters, these two white water birds were flying, but the way they flew, it's like it was effortlessly. It was effortlessly like this. And they went by, and I just looked, and I was just like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I just watched them. And then she turned and looked at me, and she just gave me a smile, like she just smiled. Like, yes, it is beautiful. And then I felt so like, oh, I'm okay. I just looked, and I was like, it's kind of like when Dorothy landed when she was there in Oz, and she looked around and everything was so beautiful. Like, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. It was that feeling like, but then as I sit there, I was like, yes, it's okay. Well, then she stood up, and I'm like, you're not going anywhere. Wherever you're going, I'm going with you. And she took my little hand. I was like, no. Well, I'm following you. She took my little hand and just kind of cupped it and just petted it. And then she just kind of told me in a way again, you can't stay. You can't stay. So I just look at the ground, and she just quickly, just a little kind of and then I just looked to the ground, and then she just kind of just took her right arm and just was like that towards the little road. Like, but I remember I could not go right. I could not go forward. She was like, no, that way. Well, I went to the left, and then I walked. Then there I was again. And I remember as I started back down, I looked at her again, like to sit, like wave goodbye. She was sitting back down, facing the water, and I was like, oh no. And then I started walking, and the light was less and less and less, and it was dark. And then I started hearing specifically out of my right ear, and I started feeling like pain. I was like, oh no. And I could hear these screams. And one of the first ones I heard was my mom, Keith. And I was like, oh, where are you? And then all of a sudden it was like, and then I remember looking up, and there was looking over down at me. And then I heard them talking. Of course, and at that moment, I had a breathing tube in. They're running around. They're talking. And my dad's on the left side like this. Mom's doing this. And the doctor's just looking down like, oh, my God. So here's what the really wild story is. Now, this is when I knew I was meant to be here. I had stopped breathing and then lost my pulse. By the time they got me to the hospital, things were not looking well. I was in that room for a little while. And they had already went and said, you need to come to the belief and understand that your son is probably not going to get to go home with you. And so they went back out in the hallway, and then the nurse had apparently started to kind of prepare me, because other family was going to be coming. And I moved my right shoulder. I moved it like this, like to get up. And she goes, oh! And she ran back outside. And then that's when everybody bum rushed back inside. And it was chaos. So apparently that's maybe when I came back in my body. That's the only thing I can think is when I just went, and then I was like, oh, and the doctor's like, don't move, lay still, don't lay still. And I was trying to, and then they're like, oh, he was like this, like, oh my God, he's like, this shouldn't be happening. Well, it wasn't meant to be. It shouldn't have been. But I believe from that point, my whole purpose was come back and tell everyone there is a place.
Yeah.
I feel that all the time. Go and tell people there's a place. Because I talked to other people who had an experience and went to another place, and theirs was, oh, there's a place. And I'm so glad I got to come back. And those people, all of them changed their ways. They literally was like, oh, dear Father in heaven, I love you. They change their ways. So between heaven and here on earth and hell, people who get that opportunity, I believe it's to come back and tell others, please listen to me. If you do anything at all, do this. There is a place. And no man cometh through heaven but through the Father. So I have told people that. And it's funny because one year at a Paracon, and I believe I was there with you and Ellen, and when Carly was there, and it was the one up in outside the little building with next to the yes. And a woman, I walked in the room and she was a psychic, and she says, I have to ask you a question. So she pulled me over there and she says, and I started, you can ask me a question, and if I can ask you a question. She says, have you died before? And I said, yes, ma'am, I have. And then my question, I says, hey, I have a question. I says, do the spirits see me that way? And they say, yes, they do. And so then she says, I'm going to ask you a question. She says, do you go places and the spirits say your name? And I say, all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they don't even know me. This is somewhere where I'm just there, and they go, hi, Keith. Hey,
well,
Keith.
You assume they don't know you.
Well, but
obviously they do.
I believe they do, and they
well,
know.
Here's my theory on why they do. I'll give you my quick theory on why they do. I'll let you get back to it. When we die, or when it happens, when we do die, right, and when you come back like that, a part of you gets left over there. Part of your soul is still there. Okay, so part of you is deceased. It's still there. Okay, but you were sent back for a mission to do something. Right. You have something you have to do. You'll be reunited with yourself when the time comes. But that's why you're given a little bit more of a direct, let's say, a direct order. But you're still there so that you can continue to get that kind of feed. Okay, it's still, that channel's still open for you to receive additional information. All right, so that's what's going on, and that's what I think why you're so connected. That's why you're also a very emotional person too, because there is such a, I mean, that is on the other side. It's love, light, all that stuff, in heaven, which is where part of you is.
It's so wild that you say that, though, and I'm just going to say this, and Carly maybe hadn't even heard this yet. This is why I feel such an angelic connection to Carly. Carly is this little, it's like I look at her and I picture like a little angel, like this little kindness and sweetness, that's her. I can be around other people and I'm like, they're dark.
I know that feeling.
Like they're dark. I get sick. I'm like,
is it when you gag like that when I'm around?
No, I'm like, they're so dark. And then the next thing I know, I hear somebody say, oh, yeah, that guy, he's a Satanist. Or, he practices dark, rich, he's satanic. Yeah. He's totally, he doesn't even believe it. And then I'm like, oh, no wonder. I'm just like, oh, I can't do it. I can't be around him. I can't do it. Because I start feeling
Ellen just posted this, and she's right. That is what happens when I'm around. I get my name called, but it's like they all just suddenly disappear after too.
Oh yeah.
They don't keep talking to me. They just like, it's that Kenna guy. Oh,
if we're trying to do like a session or something,
they do tend to run. I don't know why. I thought I was always a nice guy, but of course that's the type of spirits I end up dealing with too. It's not always the really nice ones. Let's face it.
That's true.
So they do tend to like dissipate when I come around.
But Keith, I do have a similar story to yours, though.
But you, Keith,
match up.
Yeah. Carly does too. But let me just say with Keith, he's right. Definitely. They reach out to him, other spirits, which I think you're reaching out to mostly. Mine is going the other direction. I get more of this negative stuff all the time now because of what I'm supposed to be doing. You, Keith, tend to reach out with like family member stuff reaches out to you. Oh. They connect to you. They come to you. They try to give that message to the family that they're haunting.
You
Okay.
just said it. Do you know when I go to locations and we're supposed to be investigating that? Do you know what spirits come through? The family members of the people in the
Yeah.
audience every
Yeah,
time.
that's right. That's
And
right.
it's like, oh no.
That's your gift. That's kind of your gift.
And
Mine is on the other end of it, on the helping
ask,
people get rid of this negative stuff.
ask Jay
Okay.
Maria Yates and
Yeah.
ask him all the time I'm out there. And we had a sob session. We had like 20 people crying at the chapel out there in Vulture City because
Right.
this woman, the grandmother apparently had passed, and then she did not get to see this baby, this born between the which is her daughter, and then that husband. And then I started just like I felt so sad. And then I asked, I was like, I have to ask it. Does somebody want to talk to their family member? And that woman, that grandmother came through, and they were both just sobbing. They're like, oh my God, that's her voice.
Right.
She
And
knew about everything. She came through the voice. And everybody was going like, oh my God, this is the most amazing investigation I've ever. It was like everybody was like, they were like, are you psychic? I'm like Ellen, no, I'm not psychic. But it's just that I do call it, if it's a gift, I'm blessed. But I don't go out there. That's why you never see me selling it. If God says, I want you to, then that's what it is. That's why it's all about helping people still.
Right. Right. But Carly, go ahead, because you had something you were going to mention, because I know some of your abilities too.
Yeah,
and stuff.
well,
But
it
go
also
ahead.
validates Keith's experience as well, especially with the telepathic communication. So there was a time, and this also goes into play what I believe people's mission is. It kind of goes into how their upbringing was, and that it will be what kind of attracts. Because once you get through that, if you're strong enough, you can help other people with it. You've not only gone past it, but you can return to it, but in the way of helping people. And so this was, I think, a time, I don't really remember when this happened in my lifetime, but I think I was going through a very weird time in my life of child abuse. I can't remember it. That's why.
Right.
So, and which is what I also attract. I also attract a lot of child abuse victims, which is very depressing and very weird, but it goes into play. But anyway, so I was having a dream, and I came up to this beautiful, like you said, like the pond, like overly majestic and just perfect glass cathedral. And I you just could stare at it forever, and it was like the most
very
beautiful
similar to
thing
what you
I've
were
ever
describing, Keith.
the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And the way I can describe it is I just felt complete, like I felt whole.
I felt this wash go through me, like,
and so I no one spoke a word, at least on the outside. And there were like some people walking by, and there were some really tall people there. But they all like looked familiar in a way, but I didn't know who they were. It was very strange. And so I walked into this building, and the doors opened for you. It was like super big and majestic. I was like, oh my gosh, there was like gold lacing. There was like marble floor, the gold lacing the floor, like glass and like gold pillars. It was beautiful. And so you walk in, and it's this big, long hallway. And to the right, there's some wooden fencing that's like very intricate, and these tall people standing near the fence. And there was this opening at the fence, and you walk down this pathway that kind of went around into this big atrium type thing where there was like layered seating, and every single seat was filled. And I remember looking in, and I saw at the base someone was giving a speech, or someone was talking, and everyone was like intently listening, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. It was like a weird language I'd never heard of. And I was like, but his face was fuzzy. I couldn't see who that was. And so I looked into the crowd, and I noticed my grandfather. He stood up, and he kind of like looked over to me, and I looked, and he wasn't staring at me. He was staring at the guy next to me, the really tall guy. And he was looking at him, but they weren't talking, but they were talking. You know what I mean? Like it was in their mind. And so my grandfather nods, and he comes up, and he walks over, and he takes my hand, and he leads me back into the hallway, and then like the big huge room, and then out this set of doors on the side. And it was kind of like the hump that you were talking about, but like miniature. And there was a sunset off in the distance, but I don't think the sun sets there. It's very weird. So I'm just sitting there, and he was just holding me, and we were just crying, and we didn't say a word, but we could feel it. Like there was like the touching, the communication, like you just felt like you didn't need to say anything. It was so fast. Like the communication was super duper fast.
Well, two things here. We give you guys two things. You both mentioned one thing. Then I talked to Carly about this the other night. You both mentioned this overwhelming feeling of happiness, no fear, no just love, all that. That's actually what's called a state of grace. You're in a state of grace at that point. Okay. So that's why you're not afraid of anything. That's why there's no fear. You're comfortable.
Yeah, there was no
you're
fear,
in a state of grace with God. Okay.
Right.
The other part is when you think about they never speak, you never see their mouths. You got to remember, you're no longer a corporeal being. You're no longer physical. You're just energy. You're just your soul. We're talking about the human soul. So it's just your soul. You don't need to, although that visual is there for you to make it more easy to accept and understand.
That's true.
Everything else is irrelevant. The need to actually speak, the need to actually you're sensing it. You're soul to soul. So you're no longer this, right? You're no longer physical. Right. So there's those two things that make a lot of sense when you're talking about the afterlife. Okay. Since you are in this place, there is no fear because you're in a state of grace with God. And then the other, because you don't have a physical form anymore. There's no need to see speech or, hear it or perceive it that way. It's just one thought to another.
But I will ask you this.
That's my theories, and I'm sticking to those.
When you came out of it, how did you feel? Like, did that feeling like ebb away? Because when I came out of it, I was very upset because I didn't want that feeling to go away.
Well, I started feeling it. I know when I kind of was realizing I couldn't stay there. And it was like, no, this is it's so beautiful.
You don't want to go.
And you're like, but this is something special. But I think it was my grandmother saying, you have to go back and do the message. Now that you've seen this, I got to see the view, go tell the story. You got to see it. And I need you have that ability to go back and say, I don't think everybody gets that opportunity. I think only the ones that they know that are going to go back and share that to the world. And I've been very, with love, my faith about helping people. That's not my opening song, but that is my prayer that I come up and I say, as I get to know you, I'm going to share something with you. Because I think all of us need to hear the story about what opportunity we have in this world, to believe in God, to know that He was our Savior, and that you can have that if you believe and you confess that faith. And then you don't have to have this life of being tormented with drugs or addicted to the other. If you don't want that, the greatest counselor in the world to say you don't have to have that is Jesus Christ. To go to Him and say, I need your help. And once you say you're ready to be done, I believe the moment He puts His hand on you and touches you and says, you're done, that's that. Say, I don't need it anymore. I need to give the word to go help people. If we could just share to each person, to the next, to the next, to the next, think about what this world would be. Think about, the disturbances and the fighting and the meanness and everything else. It hurts me. I have to walk away from that and the negativity. Yeah. It wears me down. And the other happiness I want to try to share is, losing your dad, who was your coach, is devastating. Losing your mom that was there and loved you is debilitating. But losing a mirror image of who you were as a twin brother, that was tough, because that was that other person that was like right there, like two buds. And, you played ball, you played music, you got in trouble together. And that was something. But I'll tell you, when Kevin realized that he was going to be with Dad, And that last week, I'm going to tell you another story, and this is going to be something that you're going to go, oh my. So I got to try not to cry. I got my nap. They're here somewhere. So my sister-in-law, yeah, my sister-in-law Darla was getting down to where she said, Keith, it's not going to be long. It's just not going to be long. So I was at work that Monday. I told my captain, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna be there. And then he says, well, if you need to leave, I said, no, I'm gonna go over there and spend the rest of the week. So that Tuesday, my brother had been asking about me, and Darla said, I'm gonna go and leave, and I'm gonna let you two stay together. And Kevin said, well, it's time. And I knew what he was talking about. And I said, Kevin, we need to decide what you'd like to do. Do you want to have a standard, service, or do you want to have something else? And he goes, well, Darla was talking about cremation, could take me and go somewhere special. And I said, absolutely. If that's what you want, that's what we'll do. And then he says, but I've got something else. And I'm like, what's that? And he goes, I know you do that ghost stuff. And I go, yeah, Kevin, I do that ghost stuff. Mm-hmm. And so he asked me, he says, do you talk to people on there? I says, yes, I have. And he goes, let's call Dad. That's exactly what he said. Let's call Dad. Now, when I did that, I was like, oh, wow. I said, well, we'll try. I'm going to see.
Right.
So when I do that, I start having those moments to where I start trying to get Dad, if you can hear me at all, please do this for Kevin. If there's ever a time he needs you, is now. So I got everything turned on, got everything set up. I said, it may take a while, Kevin, but we'll see. So Kevin went ahead and talked out, and he said, hey, Dad, it's Kevin. And right after he said that, I hear my dad's voice goes, I know. And I looked, and Kevin goes, that's Dad's voice. And I go, Dad, he go, it's me. And I looked. I says, Dad, are you here with us right now? He says, I have been. I says, yeah. Kevin had a dream the other night that a white horse came to take him away. He says, we know. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just mesmerized by it. And I'm like, well, Dad, I'm going to be with Kevin until then. And I barely caught a little bit of like need to be. Like he tried to say you need to be, but we got need to be.
Right.
And I just said, Dad, I'm going to be there for him, and I'm going to be here if you can just be there for him. And then I heard my stepmom, Donna, and she says, we will. And I could tell her voice. So then I knew, okay, good, there's family. So the week goes by, and that Sunday, Saturday night, he got to be to where he just couldn't breathe. He just couldn't breathe. He couldn't breathe. So got him in the hospital. They got him up to a room and just were kind of doing palliative care, giving him some oxygen, keeping him at peace and letting everybody be there. So as I was making my way up there, he turns and he tells Darla, he goes, where's my brother? I want my brother. And she said, Kevin, he's on the way. He'll be here in a moment. So I'm getting down the hallway. And so I walk into the room, and the whole room back is full of our family. And everybody moved out of my way. And I come up there, and my sister's on the other side. And so I get around there, and he goes, well, no real time for crying now. I said, well, we're here. And so he asked John, he goes, and he's looking up. He's looking up at the ceiling. He goes, hey, John. And John says, I'm here. He goes, can you open that door? And I looked at John, and we said, we will. He goes, okay. And he just kind of looked around. He was looking at everybody, and he looked over at me one more time. I squeezed his hand, and he goes, I heard his lips. He goes, love you. And then he winked at me. And that was it. So I had talked to Kevin prior to him this happening that I was going to try to talk to him. Remember I said that. And
Right.
Kevin's a jokester like me. And when I started saying that, Kevin goes, what are you going to do? Call me on the telephone? So that was that week.
Yeah.
So we had
Kind of in a way, yeah.
so we had the services and huge memorial, and that week, so Wednesday, everybody knew what they wanted me to do, and they says, well, go ahead, Keith, we know you're going to want to try to reach it. So everybody was there, and I had it set up, and I just barely had it on, and it was Dana and Darla and a bunch of the family. Yeah. And I said, hey, Bub, it's your brother. It's Keith. I said I was going to try to get a hold of you. Do you remember? Remember I said that?
Yeah.
And he came through and he goes, Keith. And then he goes, on that telephone. Those were the very words he told me before he died that week. And he knew when I said I was going to try to call him, it was on that telephone. So you tell me we don't talk to our family. He said it, and everybody goes, oh my God. And I said, Kevin, are you with Dad? And he kind of giggled. You just heard a giggle. And he says, I'm here. I says, well, we all love you. We're there for you. And you could just hear, they talk to each other. Have you ever listened to how they say, I've even asked, like, can somebody get my brother? And one of them will say, I will. And then they start talking to me, and Kevin walks up, Keith. And then he's right there. I just have such a love and passion for the paranormal when I get to go do that for people who want to talk to their loved ones. So I think that's why I'm so strict about people taking it serious.
Yeah.
And not making it like it's a ha-ha. Oh, it's so fun. We went out, and I says, there are times where being around,
yeah. But for a lot of people, Keith, that's all. They don't think about what it really is. They think it's just fun, pastime, and they're not. They don't think about you're talking about a human soul here. They don't think of it that way. They see it as entertainment.
Yeah, it's just entertainment.
They're not thinking about it because they see it on TV and they think, oh, it's all TV. It's all just fake. It's just entertainment stuff. And they don't realize what it really is.
Yeah, they show up with a K2 in one hand and a flashlight in the other with a dream. And I'm going to be on TV. And they haven't been in the paranormal but like a month.
Well, good luck to them.
Best of luck to you, buddy. Call me when they work out for you.
Hey, everybody has their own dreams, their own things, whatever. It's not what I do it for. It's not what it's not what I've been on TV for. I mean, I can't say too much about being on TV. I've been on TV. Did I try to get there? No, but I ended up there. And it just happened, right? I try to use it as an educational thing for people. And I try to use it to reach out to people who are having these problems. That's my perspective on why I do TV. I sure as hell don't get paid diddly. So we'll do something for it, Hey. And I wouldn't care if I did. I mean, I really wouldn't care. It's not what it's about for me.
A bigger audience to get the word out, and if people contact you to go help them.
Yeah, to try to help more people, and to try to get even now. What I've also tried to use it for a little bit, because what I've seen going on is there's a lot of young people that want to get into the field, and not for the reasons we think. All right, what they're really doing is they're looking to make a connection with something bigger than themselves. It's not about, for them, it's not about being on TV. Not all of them. A lot of it's about they want to find a spirituality because they've lost, that connection with what their parents had. A lot of them,
right?
Well, a lot of times parents fell away from their faith in the church and whatever church they were following, and so the kids grew up basically with nothing. And a lot of them are looking for something. And I've had that discussion with them. So even with that now, I try to talk about that at lectures, or even when I can a little bit on TV about, you're talking about a human soul, you're talking about faith, and you're talking about belief. And we're not talking about religion. We're talking about faith and belief in something more than yourself. That reconnection for me and you and Carly, it's that reconnection back to Jesus Christ and God, not for everybody. Some people don't know what it is. And I say you got to find that for yourself, but you got to find something positive. There's all these different, ways out there, but you've got to find one. It's got to be a positive thing. It can't be negative. It can't be against other people. It can't be, it's our way or the highway. It's about faith, not religion. All right. And you got to find that for yourself. And we try to help kids do that. We try to point them in a right direction, at least. Say, what I usually tell them is, well, what were your parents? Well, they said, well, they were this or that. Then why don't you look into that? Why don't you reach back into that of what your family came from? It's a good start, right?
Right.
Reach back into where your family came from and what their beliefs were, and look into that and see if that fits for you anymore.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't, but it's a good start.
Right.
And then you can go from there, So, and a lot of them are doing that, but they're looking to the paranormal as almost a religion.
Oh, wow.
And I tell them this is not, and I get to, some I've gotten to and said, this is not a religion. This is not, you're not going to find the answers you're looking for here.
Right.
You can get a better idea of what's going on in the spiritual realm through it, but always remember, when you're talking to something out there, you're at a haunted location, you're probably talking to a human soul. It may be lost. It may be confused. It may not be. But that's what you're talking to. Is if you believe you have a soul, that's what you're talking to. It's not just some random thing we call a ghost. Okay? At least from my perspective. There's others who would argue with that with me, that it's just energy, some kind of energy. We don't know if it's human soul or not, but I know what I believe. Okay?
I agree.
Yeah, and that's my own personal view on it. But yeah, there's a lot of that out there. So I do try to, when I'm doing television or doing shows or whatever, try to go that connection for people. And I actually do ask them, how many here actually believe in something, have a faith they believe in, or and a lot of them don't. Even people our age, they don't. So we start to have that conversation. So I try to open it up to that. That's my thing. That's where I kind of come from. Is what it is.
Can I tell you a funny story though, Keith?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm all ears. I love your funny stories.
So this past weekend, Jack's son got married over the weekend. Yeah.
I saw those pictures.
And so I grew up Presbyterian.
Talk about a true Catholic. Eh?
Yeah. I grew up Presbyterian, and the only Catholic services I've ever been to were funerals. And it's a small town thing, but the people who aren't part of that church typically sit in the back and don't really do anything. So I didn't know any of the stuff that you do during a Catholic service.
Right.
And so literally the whole time I'm looking at Jack, are we sitting down? Are we kneeling? Are we standing? What are we doing? Are we what? I'm so confused. So I was literally I don't know. It was just funny to watch, and he was giggling because I had no idea what we were doing.
I saw the pictures.
Calisthenics in church. What do you want?
I was sitting when we were supposed to be kneeling. I was kneeling when we were supposed to be sitting. And then I was standing up too early or too late. I didn't know what to say. It was just too funny.
I can see that.
It was a whole new experience, and I have a whole new outlook on people who practice in a Catholic church, because it's you remember all of that? It's
drilled into our heads over years.
Yeah, I was oh my goodness.
That's the religion part.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah,
Nick Mall just happened to say, man, this has absolutely been an amazing show tonight. Probably one of the best, in my opinion. Jack, Carly, you guys made a great choice bringing Keith Bailey on board. There you go.
Well, listen, I got so many people out there in our family in the paranormal that I have so much love and respect for, that they're doing great things. They're out there. I mean, they're helping other folks coming into the industry. They're doing stuff to really actually go help people. You see them at these paracons, and they, and that's good stuff. I mean, that's really where we're represented well in the paranormal. What is sad is with some family, needs an investigator, and then somebody shows up that misrepresents us in some horrible way. It's a demon, run. And then next thing you know, they get a bad taste about paranormal investigators. So I look out there when I see different names, and I always say, what does this person strike me? I get to looking about them, following them, see them, and you can see the pattern of people who are good people, and then the ones you just want to say a prayer for, that you hope that they may change their ways, because it gets to be like, oh, ooey vey.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's when you start having competition and fighting, and I'm better, I'm bigger, I look better in a photo, look at me. I mean, we take our photos for the shows. They have us do what we do, and we're supposed to do the part. But I always say this: I am a man of many hats.
Yes.
When I put this hat on, and you see what it says when it says paranormal investigator,
yep,
I take that with pride, because for me, that's the hat I have on. I'm wearing that cap, and I have a very, very script. Every little thing that I do of how I do it. You've seen John's reports. You've seen how arrived on this date. We had this contact with this in this room too. We do what we do seriously, because to us, we represent you guys. And then as a family, we do as the paranormal family. So it's this ha-ha stuff for me, it just doesn't work. So that's why it's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And not investigating residential cases is not for everyone. And you don't want to do it unless you're serious about it, because sometimes these cases can take months. It's not one go in, oh yeah, your house is haunted, here's the evidence. It doesn't work that way.
You throw your rose at it and say, okay, you're blessed. It's better. You're all good. Bye.
It doesn't work that way. To even figure, and you're right, people throw that demonic word around a lot, and it takes time, a lot of time, to even figure out if something is demonic or not.
Exactly.
It can take quite a while, months, years. It took us a year on that one case we just recently closed up to even figure out it was actually demonic.
Wow.
To get the actual evidence that's required to figure out something that's truly demonic, and a possession case in that particular case.
Wow.
You don't walk in at night and say, oh yeah, this is a possession case. This is a demon and it's possessed. No. You will not be able to determine that. Nobody can tell me you can walk in one night and figure that out.
Nope.
I don't care how psychic you are. I don't care, because true demons, they don't even let you know they're around.
No.
That's when they go dormant. In fact, a lot of times people say it's kind of funny. It's like it just went away.
And if you think you've got an actual demon, that because it's acting up and people are being hurt and all that, very likely you're more likely dealing with a very negative human spirit,
right?
Because they want to show off and they want the attention, and demons don't want that.
And they'll flat out say
they don't want attention at all. The demons want you to go away and pretend and pretend they don't exist. Demons do not want you to know they're there. And that's the other thing. A person who is truly possessed will not know they are.
I've only seen it one time where I actually saw the person. And this was in an ER that a mother brought this child in. And I mean to tell you, that child's eyes at one moment were totally perfect. I went back again. It was looking down. He looked back at us, and both of them were solid black. And what came out of him was not his voice. And
that's a true indicator. That's an indicator. I will tell you, that's an indicator.
Right.
You might be dealing with a demonic case.
And
there are other possibilities to that too, but that is a tell. That is one of the tells. There's you need to add up all the tells to figure it out.
Yeah.
But when you finally confront it and it really comes out, you will know it then. Trust me.
And there are small tells, like
yeah, okay, all right. If you ever see that happen, you know what you really can tell? One way you can get a really good feel for that is when you see something like that happen, in your head, start saying the Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And see the reaction that happens, because it's going to be real. If it is a demon, it's going to be a real negative reaction to that. They hate They hate the Mother of God more than they hate God himself.
Right. And I'll never
They
forget
know you're
that.
saying it, whether you say it out loud or not. They will know you're saying it.
Wow. And that's
I've had it happen. It happens. It does happen.
it's good we don't have a lot of those cases because they take a
No,
lot out
thank
of you.
Oh yes,
I'm glad
they
they're
do.
rare.
Yeah, thank goodness they're few and far between.
Yeah.
But we can run into many cases of oppression.
That's true.
Before,
I think yes, I
before
agree.
it gets to the point of possession, we can run into a lot of oppression cases and stuff like that. I hate to say it, but we are at 9:03 p.m. Keith, is there anything you want to talk about before we have to go for the night? Anything coming up on your own show, or you want to plug your own show?
Well, we've got something coming up in 2021, something that I finally got trademarked, and it's all legalized up. It is called Big Brother Paranormal, and it's about
Awesome.
us as groups coming together and being able to actually help people beyond the paranormal. In other words, if there's other needs that they may have, we get into Toys for Tots, we get into getting donations for food banks. We actually get the opportunity to go to schools and talk about bullying. We get into other things that we bring the highlight of paranormal not being all about spooky, but how we help in other ways. And so as we all well know, not everything is paranormal. So that's where we say we're the other side of it.
Right. And that is a big thing. Not everything is paranormal. Not every case is paranormal related. And, there's a lot of other stuff going on that we also try to help with. And people
those
don't
things
realize
can lead to paranormal in the future.
But yes, that's great. That's awesome. That's an awesome thing you're doing there. We all appreciate that. And looking forward to helping out with that ourselves and stuff.
It's going to be. That's where it's going to be kind of based a whole thing as us a whole. So there are great opportunities with that. But I just want to say what a blessing it is to have you two and Ellen and Lucky and everybody else that's not only on our team, but as a family. I know me and John are so blessed to actually just have you guys. When we get to go back in 2021 and get to spend time together, I'm sure there's going to be lots of tears because that's what we've missed. That's that love, those hugs. Woo! And it's so fun. I love it. I love it. So I'm just,
back.
It is. It will. So that is the thing. But I always tell people, take a moment to just be kind. Take a moment to listen to somebody and reach out to them. And, the help that you give today may be the help that you need later on at some other time. So always think of that.
Absolutely. Well, Keith, thank you very much, brother. Always a pleasure to have you. We will have you back again if you'll let us. And we'll have a lot longer talk. Time flies when you're having fun, my friend.
I know, doesn't it? Just like that. Much love to you two.
Yeah, you too, Keith.
Love you guys.
All right. Talk to you later. Thank you, everyone else, for watching, checking in with us today. We greatly appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the show. I know many of you did. You said so. And I will say this. If you're looking for any of my books online, you can check us out. On Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Just put in my name, Jack Kenna. Do a search. You'll find everything I'm connected with. I want to thank again Keith tonight for coming in and being on our show. He's a great guy. He's our brother from another mother, and we do love him. But thanks again, everybody. We didn't get, we didn't take a lot of people's questions tonight, but we'll be doing more of that next week. And we love you all. Have a good night, everybody.
Night. Bye.